I think a lot of people were surprised to see 2 losses for Georgia in 2024 after what we had seen from them in, of course, previous years. But it was just a tough schedule, and the projection that we had for last year, it actually was 9-3. So they did better than that projection. Here are our projections over the past 4 years and the actual record. Keep in mind, this is not a prediction. It's simply a projection based off of the schedule and the opponents. In 2021, they were projected to go 11-1. They went 12-0. Same thing in 22 and 23. They actually were projected to go 12-0, and they did go 12-0. But last year, 9-3, because of that schedule, it was really tough. Because of that schedule, again, they were projected to lose 3 games. So they actually beat the projection. Georgia has done better than the projection here 3 out of the last 4 years. So keep that in mind as we get into this. Again, here's the schedule, and this is the scale that we use to get this projection. It's all based off of our tier system, our rankings. Georgia is a tier 1 team. So if they're playing a tier 2 team, that game goes to 61 to 70%. That's where that falls in. But if they play that game on the road, it switches it to a 50-50 game, a game in the white. So that's how you can see where the home field advantage plays into this, and then also just the teams that you play and where they are ranked, what tier they're in. That's the formula. Again, not a prediction. It's just a mathematical formula to get a projected record. These projections are usually pretty accurate, usually within a game. Maybe sometimes only, maybe they're in 2 games if a team surprises or has a much better or worse season than expected. But just kind of tells you what to expect and what could be a successful season. If you can do better than these projections, you've had a successful season. And again, Georgia has done that. They have been very successful the last few years. So we will start with the easy games, and I think you've got 5 of them: Marshall, Austin Peay, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Charlotte. And now Mississippi State game, again, where it's in the schedule between Florida and Texas, it's on the road. It depends on how good Mississippi State is, but they're like one of the lower tier. They're actually in the lowest tier in the Power 4. So just going off of our tier system, that game does turn out to be in the green. Kentucky is a tier above Mississippi State, but that game's at home, so that's the difference there. These are games that Georgia should win. It would be a pretty big shocker if they were to lose any of these games, really. So they should take care of business in those 5 games. And then you've got games in the purple. They've got a bunch of these games where they should be favored, but maybe not by a ton. We're talking about Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida, and Georgia Tech. Now, you've got Alabama, Ole Miss, and Florida. Those teams are in a tier below Georgia. That's why they're in the purple. Auburn and Georgia Tech are actually 2 tiers below Georgia, but those games are on the road. That's why they are in the purple. If those games were at home, they'd be in the blue. But because they're in purple, because they're on the road, they are in the purple here. Again, Auburn, Georgia Tech, games where, I think all of these games here, Georgia Tech's going to be favored by about a touchdown. I'd say, if I was just guessing, probably favored by 6 against Alabama, 9 or 10 against Auburn, 7 or 8 against Ole Miss, 6 or 7 against Florida, 7 or 8 against Georgia Tech. All those do kind of fit into that category. Those are games that Georgia should win if they bring their A game. But when you've got this many games that are in this category, odds are you're going to lose 1 or even 2 of them. And you'll see that when you see the projected record here in just a second. You've got Tennessee and Texas. So Texas is tier 1. They're the same tier as Georgia. That's going to be a 50-50 game no matter what. Tennessee, on the other hand, is tier 2. But that game is on the road. That's why it's considered a 50-50 game. So like if you flip Tennessee and Alabama, then the Tennessee game would be in the purple, and Alabama, if it was on the road, it would be in the white. That's just how it works with this formula. So you've got the toughest games of the year, I think, Tennessee and Texas, but then again, you've got a lot of tricky games. Alabama on the road at Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida, and even on the road at Georgia Tech. Those are games where Tennessee will be favored. They'll be a clear favorite, in my opinion, in all 5 of those games. But they won't be enough of a favorite that they're going to run through all those games. I don't think it's going to be tough, I think, for Georgia to win all 5 of those games. So what's the projection? Well, when you've got games in the purple here, these 65%-ish games, odds would tell us they're going to win probably 3 of the 5. So, again, odds would say they're going to lose a couple of those games, and then they would split the 50-50 games. So the projection is actually 9-3. Same projection as last year, even though they don't play Clemson. I think Georgia Tech being better, having Auburn on the road, some of these factors go in here to kind of replace the Clemson game from last year and give you that same projection. So 9-3, the projected record for Georgia. If they do what they've done in the past, they're probably going to go 10-2 because, again, they've beaten the projection by a game almost every year. But if it's a disappointing year, I think even 8-4 is possible. But 9-3, that just given where Georgia has been, I think 9-3 would be a disappointment. But it is, I think, it is the projection here based off of this formula. I think the over/under for Georgia probably winds up at 9.5 with this schedule, maybe even 10.5. So again, I think most people are expecting more, but with our formula, Georgia does come out as a projection of 9-3 in 2025. So how do they stack up with other teams in the SEC at the top? Well, these are some of the other projections, and you can see Texas actually has the best projection at 10-2, then Georgia at 9-3. Tennessee and Ole Miss are in a tier below Georgia, but their schedules are much easier, and that's why you see 9-3 as their projection, the same as Georgia, despite Georgia, again, the fact that they're a tier above those teams. So schedules mean a lot in college football, and Georgia does have one of the tougher schedules the way it plays out compared to like Tennessee and Ole Miss. So yeah, Georgia projected to be right there in the thick of things, potentially back in the SEC championship in 2025.